Thank you everyone for joining. I want to introduce my special guest for this first episode, Jonathan Castner.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
They're all doing great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So why don't you start with like how we met? A little background about where we met.
Once upon a time, I was doing a favor for a friend. He was doing an event and he had an all hands on deck situation, needed me to save him. And I have, I guess, always considered myself to be a bit of the knight on the white horse coming to the rescue. And I had nothing else going on that evening. I said, sure, you can pay me. And I went and did my funky thing. And I was packing up my lights, and let's see how I can say this appropriately. This charming young lady approached me with a lot of enthusiasm, and we got talking. And she told me how she was new to town, and she was trying to build a network, and she liked my whole thing about telling stories, and she was all about storytelling herself. And when I explained that I've spent pretty much my entire professional career as a freelance photojournalist, that seemed to continue the conversation. And then, as I've told many people, I fell immediately deeply in like with her, and we've been friends ever since. Everyone, meet Ashley.
You're so kind. Thank you so much. That was a great introduction. I love our how we met stories with all my friends, but especially yours because I was just volunteering at that event and you were starting to dip out and I was like, oh, like I didn't get a chance to grab your card. And so I was really excited that we stayed in touch. I think that you're fantastic. And then when you told me the kind of work you've been doing as a
Yeah.
photojournalist, of course, I found that fascinating. Um,
Well, well, the thing that I've said over and over and over again is that I realized a long, long time ago that my life has been like a movie,
yeah, it really,
with scene transitions and repeating cast of characters and cameo appearances. And what I've been trying to do for a long time is listen to the music and hear when it's going to start signifying that there's going to be some kind of foreshadowing, scene change, something's going to happen. And in that way, kind of prep myself for whatever comes up in the as soon as that transition happens. Because for those of you who know cinema, usually the sound alerts us to what's happening unless it's the jump scare, right? Um, so I didn't really have a lot of interest in going to that event. Something told me I needed to go. I was right.
I love it. I think that instinct is one of those things that we underestimate for the skills that we have, and the better we are at
For
trusting
life.
our gut.
For life. Most people try to live in their heads, they do a poor job of it. There's a whole lot of information that we receive that few people are open to because they can't make, if they're trying to be logical, they can't make instant sense of it.
Right.
And part of the thing of instinct, intuition, my sensors are up, is learning to at least somewhat process this information so that you can use it to your benefit.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of auditory and visual inputs as well as sound and things like that. So
Well, I recently learned that we process visuals
mm,
60,000 times faster than we do language.
what?
60,000 times, right? And that's just our visual process, right? Do you know how many nervous systems we have?
No, I'm nervous all the time. Tell me more.
We have three, right?
Okay.
And part of that is literally what we refer to as the gut.
Oh, okay.
And when
Hello.
somebody says, I don't know, my guts aren't telling me, that actually means something,
Right.
right? That it's an extremely primal system
Right.
that we barely have tapped into. Now, you can talk to your guru and your mystic and all that who will attempt you to have at least have you pay attention to that. But when
Mhm.
you're walking down the street and your buddy says, "Hey, let's take this shortcut and save some steps," and something in the back of your head goes, "This is a bad idea."
Right.
Why would you get that impression? It's a sunny day, da, da, da. Something there that you can't rationally process is saying, no, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. But you are getting some kind of impulse.
Right.
And um, I knew that even though I wasn't particularly interested in showing up to that event, something told me that it was a really smart idea. And it was because I met you.
You are
And
so.
that was a as I told people, a critical part in the new phase of my personal life and my career that I'm in right now.
Right. Share that a little bit before we go into like your past. Tell me like the kind of exciting work that you're doing right now.
I'm starting to get some really neat traction on a couple of projects. Um, right now, I have in the works a project of either 10 or 12. We haven't written the scripts yet, so I'm not exactly sure how that's going to pan out, but 10 or 12 short instructional videos for a mortgage broker to help people better understand how to prep themselves for things like reaching out to a guy like him so
Right.
that they can have their ducks in a row and better understand the process to smooth that out. We're doing that as a marketing tool for him, but it is what I refer to as the handful approach to marketing or reaching out to clients, where you're never asking, give me something, give me something. You're saying, hey, this is for you.
Right.
Just just for you, right? I hope you like it.
And then you're picking your clients that you have come to you, which is so important. If you're really careful and intentional about how you make your marketing products, you'll be able
Exactly.
to attract the kind of people that you're looking for.
Exactly. In the other side of things, I'm setting up the pilot for a full paid instructional that a business lawyer is doing, where he wants to set up an online set of classes that are not lectures, but they're a bit more granular than that. Under the premise of everything you would want to know about business law so that you don't have to hire me,
Right.
the lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Including, like, we're going to walk you through why this form is important and why you got to make sure that your dots are connected.
Right.
And so that's going to be something that's going to require a whole lot more than just visuals, because I'm overseeing the project as the basically the project coordinator. So helping him build the website, get the URL, make sure that everything is password protected, that the infographics are taken care of. Um,
So everything
and
before you even experience those videos that you're talking about.
right, right. And this is where I go from a guy who has a camera to somebody who sees the breadth of the actual project within the confines of marketing and visual communications. All right.
Absolutely.
Um, and then I am having follow up tomorrow on an interior designer who wants me to help her put together a cooking demo video so that we can explain that she's not just someone who can build and design your $500,000 ultra deluxe kitchen, but from by making it look good. But she also cooks, so she knows how that it's going to be functional. So it's going to be a cooking demo promo for design, right? And since I'm a food person, I've shot plenty of food things, including food video. I completely am like bang on, right?
Yeah.
Um, and this evening, I'm heading up to the hills in Evergreen because this lady who's a high end real estate agent wants me to do a cinematic, almost historical tour of this $3.5 million house that's up in the hills. It was built in the 1970s as like some rich guy's party pad. And so we're basically be doing is I'm doing a technical walkthrough to plan out how the camera is going to move through all of the spaces in the house, where in every room a different party is going on. We're going to try to do it so it's a slightly visually different era from room to room to room to room, showing emotionally the history of the house and projecting yourself into all the fun things you can do. Right. The idea is to do this in a continuous take. so that rather than the typical thing of, and look at the beautiful Italian marble, no, we're actually giving you an emotional experience and scripting everything out, and probably going to have something in the neighborhood of, I would probably figure at least 25, probably 40 to 50 extras who are all going to be moving about on cue to be doing things as the camera moves around and then slices the cheese and comes around here while the person's pouring the drink. And then we go through the other room and the guy's playing the piano and he's swinging around the key. So it's going to be a very, very complicated thing to do. And I may have to hide some edits. I don't know if we can pull it off in one take, but gosh darn it, we're going to try. And what I really want to do, and I shouldn't even say this out loud because it means as soon as I say it, it means I can't do it. I really want to wind my way through the entire thing and get to the patio because it's on a valley that faces south. And we're doing the whole thing at night, which is why I got to be there at 8:30 to see how all of the lights are. What I really want to do is I want to get all the way out into the patio, open up the doors, see the valley and the setting sun, swing the camera 180, and then somehow seamlessly transition that into a drone shot that pulls away to show the house.
Oh wow.
That
That's
might be a bit Spielberg to pull off, you know. But gosh darn it, I'm gonna
if
try because that would be cool.
if anyone
And
can do
so
it, it's
and
you.
so this is gonna fit into the category of, oh, I bet you haven't seen this before, right?
Right.
But she actually came up with the idea and knew that I was the guy to pull it off because I think that way. I'm not a guy who um, puts the pieces, what do you want? Draw it out. I will do that. I've spent my entire career trying to figure out how to give somebody an immersive experience in something that they either should or want to have a connection to by, like I said, immersively placing them there so they feel like they are present by not trying to talk at them, but by trying to reach into them and put them right inside of my head.
And when and that's your understanding of like what the goals are for your client as well as what the audience wants. But
Right.
how are ways that you have before any of that even built trust with someone to get to that point? Because I think that we've had a lot of really great conversations about the how you are often the guy that when something terrible goes wrong, they call you and have you come in and build trust with someone who's experienced a traumatic event or something like that. How what are the pre-work steps that get there, like before you even show up and build that
Um,
trust and rapport with people?
Step one, you have to listen,
Ooh, okay, that's a good one.
right? It's not about me.
Right.
It's about them and what they need. My
Right.
job is to facilitate and amplify their voice, right?
Right.
But we can't figure that out unless I get out of myself
Mm.
and I put myself into them, understand who they are, what's important, what the message is, what the receiver wants to receive.
Right.
So if we can't do that, then we're not even talking. And I largely communicate through visuals. I write, I'm not a writer, right? So I will be helping people with, scripting and such. When it comes to the voiceover, I'm going to make sure that I help produce and coach them through that procedure. But I'm not Hemingway. I don't claim to be, and you don't have to be. Because if anything, what I need to make sure is that the person's voice is authentic. So with the mortgage guy, he explained that while he has this very quiet Southern gentleman energy about him when you speak to him, when he writes, he is very academic. Well, fine, Jim, you write that, and then we will convert that into your gentle manner so that when you're talking on camera, it really feels like you're sitting across from Jim, not
Right.
somebody who's written a dissertation. But I have to know how he talks
Right.
in order to make that happen. And I
And it
can
has to
only
match the
understand that. Yes, I can only do that by listening, by not trying to create a persona, but making sure that it is authentic to them.
right, because if they show up and they're like, "Oh, I thought you were going to be a totally different person," it's Yeah, I think the term is catfishing is what the kids say these days.
I believe that is the thing. Yes. So my whole thing has always been about, and will always be about, authenticity. I was reading something the other day that said it's getting increasingly hard to advertise to people because, one, everybody assumes they're being sold
Mm,
constantly, all
yeah,
day. And they also assume they're being sold by algorithms. So that algorithm knows more about you than you probably know.
right,
So they're, as they say, the smell detector has always gone on. Does this smell right? Does it feel right? And if you can be utterly authentic and you're not trying to talk at your person, but you're speaking to them, then they're going to feel like they're having a conversation. Because
right.
in all honesty, you are. You're,
Yeah,
you're not. You're not trying to. You're not trying to pander. You're not trying to impress. You're simply trying to directly communicate and directly connect.
right. No, that's really hard too, though, because I think that it sounds easier than it is, right? I think that a lot
Hmm.
of people will be like, if you're naturally gifted at it, it's a little easier, but
Yeah.
sometimes that becoming natural at it takes a lot of honing that craft. And I think that when you've shared a lot of stories about your journalistic career, when you have honed in on that listening aspect, you are able to kind of filter out the noise versus signal and figure out where you want to go after as a follow-up question. And I think,
Yeah. Going back to the listening thing,
yeah,
in order to do what I do, whether it's for a commercial client or what I did for years with um, editorial subjects, I have to assume that the person that I'm dealing with doesn't know how this works. So I have to let them lead everything.
mm,
I have to spend a lot of time listening,
yeah,
engaging enough so they know that I'm, you know, connected to them,
right,
but let them be themselves. But I have to be predictive. I have to understand where they're going. Certainly in news, because I can't manipulate things, and take seven and action. Can't do that,
right,
right? Um, but it made me very, very sensitive to people's energy, where their um, where their motivations are,
Ooh,
and how to become pleasantly invisible in plain sight, so that my presence is acknowledged, but not influencing them. That we can have, and certainly, one of these days, actually, I'm gonna drag you along to when I do an executive portrait,
sign me up.
because the way that I have to interact with somebody who largely doesn't want to be there is because I'm legitimately interested in people,
Mm,
and I am trying to let them be comfortable, present, but let the moment that we are in disappear. So I did a project um, about a week ago, and I had to do a bunch of executive portraits, and I truly got two of the greatest compliments that I can get in that field. One of which was, "Oh, we're done. I didn't know we started yet."
that's perfect.
Right? Because none of them were saying, "Oh boy, I can't." Nobody wants to do that. They're doing it because they kind of have to. It's a necessary evil. And so I try to make it fun. I try to make it engaging. And then at the end of it all, one of the people came out, and his office was just down the hall from where I'd set up my studio. And he said, "I've been listening to you for an hour and a half with all of this. You can talk to anybody about anything."
100%. You really can.
Yeah. Um, and that's because I'm interested. I care. And it's not about me. It's
Right.
about trying to pull out of, that director of engineering who's really smart, but he's very uncomfortable, something very human about him.
Right.
So that what comes across is legitimately Phil. That's just the energy that Phil gives off. It's authentic, but because I have him in a legitimately fill energy space, he's not self-conscious. I
Do
am
you,
simply extracting the essence of Phil for the 7 minutes that I have in front of my lens.
and that's it. You can do a portrait in 7 minutes.
Oh, I got horror stories. Well, usually when it comes to the executive portrait, I
Right.
give myself 3 minutes. One,
Oh,
two, three. Right.
wow.
Even if the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or whatever sends you out, the higher up you get, the less energetic they are to have to deal with you.
Right.
And you have no idea what kind of energy they're going to have, what's on their mind. So I have a plan, I make it work, and I'm engaging with them about something that is human about them that I've learned. So that we're not talking about the business, we're not talking about something that makes him have to think. I put him in a positive emotive state so
Right.
that this energy comes out of them because it's legitimate. Because we're talking about his grandkids or his boat or his last trip or how excited he is to finally get out of the office and spend some time you know, climbing mountains or whatever. And so he comes across alive, comes across confident, energetic, and that's how people want to relate to executives anyway. They don't want
Right.
to see a guy who looks like he's in the middle of organ failure because he just can't stand being here. That look that's so 80s. We don't do that anymore. But I give myself 3 minutes
3 minutes.
because there are 3 minutes. Because if I can't get something, because I need one frame
Right.
that feels like Steve. I got 3 minutes, and I've actually had a situation which I will tell you offline because I don't want to upset anybody about it, where I had a guy who knew that I was putting him on the cover of the magazine,
Yeah.
and he threw a fit and went upside the marketing guy's head. And I said, "Hey, they sent me out here, yada yada yada." He already saw me doing the other photos related to the piece, and I said, "They want to put you on the cover. I need to set you up the cover. I need to get my lights set up. I just need you for 3 minutes once you get you on set."
Yeah.
And he said, 3 minutes, huh? Go.
Oh no. So you're already losing. You're trying to catch up.
So I blindly set up my lights. Lucky me, they were kind of in the right spot. I didn't get a chance to get my exposure.
Right.
Thank goodness for digital. I took one shot. I totally botched my exposure. I just went flick, flick on the back of my exposure thing. I took two more frames and he walked.
Oh my gosh.
He gave me three pop, pop, pop with the strobes, and he said, "Okay, I'm out of here." And he walked out.
And he knows that it's going on a magazine cover.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh.
But I nailed it.
Yeah. Well, and so I think that comes down to how much you do to prepare. You're always one of the first people early to show up
Yeah.
to our networking event that we have. I think that you are very good about making sure that you confirm in the mornings. You're always like, "Good morning. How's your day going? Are we still on for X time?"
Well,
You have a
what
lot of really healthy habits that I love emulating because you've
it's
done it
it's
for so long.
it's because there's always more pieces to take into consideration than you think.
Right.
In the news world, when you're doing a feature piece, you know that for an event, the more interesting things are going to happen on the edges,
Oh,
setting
really?
up, tearing down.
Okay.
Always, always the backstage stuff is always the most interesting part of the presentation.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, you get a real dynamic shot of the governor, at the podium, wildly gesticulating, right? But the really interesting one is when he's backstage. In 2 minutes, he's going on, and he's fretting over his notes because something has just changed, and he has to now figure out how to incorporate this thing into what he's about to talk about. Or he's really nervous because it's a hostile crowd and he's trying to steel himself up. These little things that happen, these quiet little things that happen just before showtime, are always so personal, right?
Yeah.
So whenever I've been covering anything like that, I'm always like, forget out there, I want to be backstage. You know,
Oh,
can I get him as he walks down the hall before showtime? Can I get him when he comes off, bathed in sweat? Oh God, that was terrible. The press is gonna eat me alive tomorrow. That's the shot.
that's the shot.
So the and it's always on the edges. And so, back with my photojournalist friends, I would always say, okay, what's the picture that you want? Do you want the photo of the champion standing in triumph over his defeated foe? Or do you want the photo of the former champion who got his ass beat, crying in his soup the following day?
Oof.
We all say, oh, I want the soup photo. I want him seeing the emotion, the pure emotion of how his world has just ended
Yeah.
as the former three-time world champ.
Oh, oh, that's brutal.
It is, but it's actually the most relatable human emotion of the two,
Right.
right? Few of us know what it's like to be on top of the world, but we all know what it's like when everything's crumbling down. It's
Oh,
much more
absolutely.
relatable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the things that I think is really interesting about the kind of work that you do is going back to the storytelling, right? Not even just everything that you capture visually, but there is an element of storytelling that you watch unfold. And I think that you have a heightened awareness of when to capture that story and how to capture that story. But you've been around cameras your whole life. So do you want to give us a little bit of a background of your history and your story?
Um,
As it relates to how it's informed your job,
no,
not
no, 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 no. It just sometimes reminds me of how old I am. Sorry. Um, I stumbled into making images because I had to have an art class in the third grade, and I slacked. And what I wanted wasn't available, and the only thing that was available was introduction to the trumpet. That wasn't going to happen, and introduction to photography. Can you see me as a trumpet player? I mean, come on.
This is great.
Um, and it was the whole cliche of seeing your first print magically appear as an image on the formerly blank piece of paper under the safe lights. It was just magic, and I just never stopped doing it. But nobody ever figured out that this guy who was always in the dark room, always making pictures, that was his real strength.
Right.
And um, I would run around the neighborhood just looking through the lens. I wouldn't even take pictures. I was just looking through them, right?
Do you
Because
find
I
it?
was I was broke. I couldn't afford all the film, but I could always afford to look, right? I could always find some way to frame something that was interesting. And I never stopped. And it's it's a wonderful world that we live in, Ashley. And
It-
most people don't look at it. They don't actually truly observe the myriad of things that's around and are constantly changing.
right.
And so um, when I'm teaching students, and I really enjoy this, one of the things that I like to say that always makes them kind of stop dead in their tracks is when I say, where we're standing right now is a nearly infinite number of amazing images. Do you see any of them? Because they're there. You're used to seeing what you're used to seeing. And I love when I'm doing a job and for those of you who missed last week's episode, if I'm ever giggling to myself while I'm working, oh yeah, the pictures are good, right? And I see something and I shoot it and I'm all happy bouncy and I show the picture to them and they say, oh wow, that's cool. Where's that? It's right there. You walk by it every day. You don't see it. Um, but I learned a long time ago that the passion that I have for seeing the world is because I do understand how beautiful it is, how wonderful it is. And people are a part of this. We do horrible things, but we also build cathedrals and write operas and sonnets, and we unlock the mysteries of the universe. Don't get down by the fact that there are monsters amongst us, there's also a lot of artists and beautiful, sensitive people. And when I am working, heck, when I'm not working, I try to stay as close to the emotional state of a happy 6-year-old as possible. Because when you're 6 years old, everything is possible, everything is beautiful, everything is wonderful. Um, they say that Bigfoot's a myth. I think Bigfoot's real. Let's go find him, right? You're socially um, capable, but you haven't been tainted by society. Put away those foolish things and get serious. No, I'm not going to get serious. I'm going to get sillier as I get older, because silly is where you find interesting things. Um, Humor in visuals is very hard to do. And to me, I find interesting things that I find amusing. But if I know that I'm giggling to myself because it's funny or because it's beautiful or it all just came together, if I'm in that emotional state and I'm using the mental tools and the physical tools, the skill set that I have to convey that enthusiasm to the viewers of my work, they're probably going to get it. They're probably going to have that, what I refer to as the ooh factor, right? My job is always to produce ooh, because if I produce ooh, then they can get to ah. Ooh, ooh, what's this? Ooh, who's that guy? What's going? Ooh, wow, that's lovely. What's with all the blinky lights? Ah, that's neat. I need
Right.
to buy one of those. Or, ah, Barbara, get these guys on the phone. I want a meeting.
So where are sources of inspiration for you? Where do you continue to draw on that well of childlike excitement?
Every day, everything,
Everything, all the
um,
time.
everything is there. You just have to be open to it. Um,
So how would you teach
so
someone to be open to it? Because I think that like we get
get
older, we get
out
caught
of your
in all the other
bubble.
things.
Get out of your bubble, right? There is no box other than that which you put yourself into, right? So on Sunday was my best friend's birthday, and had him over and we had dinner. And then I walked him out to his car, and there was a double rainbow right in front of us. Right? And he's kind of wired like I am. That's why we're besties. And we stood there for a minute looking at it. And he said, "Man, I hate telling people about the things that I see." And they say, "How do you find this?" And he says, "I leave my house." You got to leave your house if you want to see the world. If you want to see what's there, you have to assume that it's all right there. You got to read better books. You got to get outside of your usual haunts. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So stand on your head, crawl around on the grass. Ask yourself what it would be like from your dog's perspective, right? When I'm working, I'm constantly crawling around, crawling into things, climbing on top of stuff, because I want to see how it's like that's not 5'11",
Right.
right? So I wear the jeans out in my knees because I'm always looking up at stuff.
Right.
Um, and that's how you break your perspective physically, so
Right.
that you can break your perspective mentally of how things are. Get up early, stay out late, go someplace new. There's a thing that I read about a long time ago, that what makes traveling, certainly foreign travel to a lot of people, so wonderful is not that they're going to some place that is far away and exotic. It's that they're preparing themselves to go to some place that is exotic and beautiful.
Right. It's not the
That
actual experience.
the
It's the
emotive um, preparation of, oh boy, we're finally going to go to Venice. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, right? And you get everything together, and then you find out that for one reason or the other, you can't go. And now you've got 6 days or 2 weeks that you've blocked out for that with nothing else to do. And so you go, well, I guess we'll go for a hike, but you're already in that emotional state that I was supposed to go into Venice. And you
Right.
have one of the most amazing hikes, been there before, but one of the most amazing hikes you've ever had because your brain is expecting new, right? So, live here in the Denver area where people will say, hey, finally got that time. We're going to go spend, 8 days in Venice. Well, right now, there's some guy in Venice going, hot diggity, I can finally see the Rocky Mountains.
Right.
Wherever you are is exotic to somewhere else.
No,
Unless
that's
of course you're in Gary, Indiana, and then I just apologize for all those poor people there. But the further you get away from your experience, physically, mentally, emotionally, the more exotic, the more beautiful, the more interesting everything is.
absolutely.
And that's really the key, is assuming that everything is wonderful
I
because it
like
is.
it is. Yeah. So one of the packing tricks that you have, because you get so involved in your work, and I love that you're one of those people in my life that always inspires me to uh, go after my dreams and pursue the things that make me happy and are passionate and like intellectually engaging. One of my favorite stories that you told me is about your socks and how you kind of make sure that you don't get too caught up in your career that you forget to, um, you know,
The backup socks.
yeah. So your
Yeah.
backup socks. Tell me about the
Well,
backup.
part of that was also because I spent almost 27 years on call 24/7. Um, that there wasn't really any time to go on vacations and such because I was constantly being launched out the door. Usually, I think, roughly speaking, I think for most of that period of time, um, 75% of my work gave me less than 72 hours notice, and a good 25% of that gave me less than 12 hours notice. And there were plenty of calls that would say, "I need you in Kansas City tomorrow at 9 o'clock. How soon can you be in Kansas in Grand Junction? I need you in Pueblo now. Go."
Wow.
So I was either flying out the door, doing my job, or prepping for the next time I run out the door.
Right. Back to back.
Right. And I would never leave cell reception because when that panic call happened, I had to be already in motion. I couldn't say, well, I got to do laundry first and I got to charge my batteries. No, 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 no. You come back from the job and you start charging your batteries and prepping your gear because I may be spinning back around and going, right, back then. So I developed the backup socks so that it told me, okay, I've got two pair of backup socks and they're totally different color. So I could see them in my drawer. So I have got to find an hour and a half in the next 2 days to do socks, to do laundry because I'm running out of clothes, which also meant I should probably back up my files, send out that invoice, finally get back to the guy that I said I was going to contact him 6 days ago. That was um, my visual cue that I had to go into a short little piece of um, self care, I believe is the term, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would just keep on wagon training. You know,
Well, yeah.
I read some stories about guys that they were constantly on the go, and so they would just swing by Walmart, buy another pack of socks, another pack of underwear, another shirts, and just throw the other stuff out and just put on the stuff and go because they were never truly ever home.
Right.
Uh, Lucky me, I didn't go in that direction, which is why I developed backup socks.
Well, but
And
backup
even
socks
though I'm
also.
not that way, I still have my backup socks.
Well, and they're a signal to you that you need to do other things as well. So it wasn't
Yeah.
just the one problem. It is, hey, I need to slow down, pause, regroup. And I think that making a ritual like that is really important to make sure that you are tending to all of your needs and not just going go, 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 go all the time. Otherwise, you get, you're spent and you don't have anything left for your craft.
Yeah, well, unless you're wired like me, and then you
You are
can't.
next
I
level.
am. I am just the Energizer Bunny.
You really
Um, I'm an experiment in perpetual motion. I did the backup socks not because I couldn't keep on wagon training until the end of time. It was that it was an indicator that there was something else that was slipping.
Right. Other things
And
that he tended to.
yeah, so I think I mentioned to you that I I didn't find out that I'm ADHD until I was about 44,
Oh wow,
something
that's
like that, right?
yeah.
I didn't find out that I was dyslexic until I was almost 38, right? But I had luckily been smart enough to figure out how to put together systems to make things work better.
Right.
And so, in some aspects, you would think that I'm OCD because I always do things a certain way. No, that's so I don't screw up. That's because I don't get so utterly immersed and hyper focused in what I'm doing that I forget something really, really basic,
Right.
right? So I run very much all the mundane things run in a program so that I can be completely and utterly, happily, obsessively immersed in the thing that gets me up early every day.
It's just like surgeons or pilots. You are very much similar of that mindset where you've
Yeah.
established processes, you go through the motions in a very strategic and careful way because you know that that will set you up for success. But what it's your success, right? It's not like you're prescriptive and tell everyone, wake up at this time like I do.
Well, in a way, yes, right. But in another way, there's two factors for me. One, I absolutely dearly love what I do.
Mm,
Um, I'm not really wired to do anything else. I have to explore the world. I have to share these experiences. I can't selfishly keep them to myself. I
right.
have to give them, right? If I if I if a huge bag of money fell out of the sky and I didn't have to work for money, I'd still keep doing what I do because it's just so gosh darn fun, right? But I do some of the things that I do in the way that I do it because I feel a sense of responsibility to not just the client, that I have to make sure that I do everything that I can to meet or exceed their expectations. But I have a rare opportunity to know that the work that I do impacts people, that I am telling people things about a world that they may never experience, one way or the other, whether it is, you know, doing photos for an article on some cool scientist, right? And just what he does, but at the same time going into the lab where he does his research that is a highly secured facility that I don't care how much money you have, you can't buy access there,
Yeah.
but I get to go through the door, right? I get to peel back layers of an onion that people do not realize exist. But
Right.
when I show them what I see, again with that enthusiasm, I broaden their world. I give them things to think and hopefully feel that they didn't realize were possible until they saw my work. And I have a responsibility to them to do it well.
I love that. I called you when I was in Santa Fe last week, and I was at Georgia O'Keeffe's
Yeah.
art exhibit with that photography, the color photography that they have right now on display of her life, and I was super excited to share it with you because we both nerd out about photography. And at the end of the tour, they said that art is not finished when the artist finishes it; it's when the audience experiences it. That's when it actually gets it. That's when it comes to its completion. And I think that that was a really good perspective for me in understanding that we can all have really wonderful talents, but if we keep them to ourselves, we're actually not only robbing ourselves of that joy and passion that you experience, but like we're also, you know, robbing the world of those opportunities. So I think that it's great that you found a way to really find your passion and turn that into a self-sustaining career as well.
Well, I have believed for a long time that there are truly geniuses out there that we don't know about.
Mm.
There's somebody out there who's writing music that makes Mozart look like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, right?
Right.
But his sense of self-worth, his self-image is so poor Nobody in his family knows that he writes music, but he has all these beautiful manuscripts that are transcendent. And we
Yes.
won't find out about them until somebody runs across them in the attic when they tear down his house in 70 years. And we'll never even know who it is because he never wrote his name to it,
Right.
right? I really think that that's the way that it is. The more that that brain is able to push the boundaries of perception, and that includes the sciences, right?
Yeah.
Um, for all the engineering types out there, engineers are creative. Good accountants are creative.
Right.
I was talking to an accountant the other day, and she was
That's
very
great.
she was very humble about it. I said, but no. You can look at a spreadsheet and you can read it like a conductor in a symphony. You can see how all of these things fit, and everybody else is just a bunch of numbers. That's creativity, because creativity is making something out of, or is revealing something which um, essentially only you see until it's created. But
Right.
there has to be, if there's going to be performer, there has to be an audience,
Absolutely.
and that's why um, I do what I do because I know that there's an audience for it. I started out doing very classical landscape photography, and while I love nature, there really isn't a, well, certainly isn't a business that you can really do in that world. But the nature world is one where um, it became so personal to me that I didn't really have an audience except for myself. So if I'm out on a hike or something, I always have a camera with me or whatever, but I don't really have an audience for those experiences. And so they become very, very personal. And sometimes I'll make a photo or not, but usually I'll just sit there and look and be immersed in the experience. But the places that I've gotten to go in my journalism career, in my commercial career, do broaden somebody else's experience. I mean, we've all seen the look at Half Dome and Snake River and blah blah blah. That's not necessarily going to change a lot of people's lives,
Right.
but if they understand this new technology that's coming along, that's going to make a big deal, or they get to meet this person who's doing something that is rearranging our perspective of things. That's different. That's having an audience that can not just absorb something, but they can synthesize it into something new.
And it'll stick with them longer, and they'll hopefully
Yes.
pursue other similar experiences of art and beauty and
The
truth.
last thing that I want is for somebody to look at something that I've produced and say, "Oh, that's nice."
Oh, that's nice. No, ooh, ah.
I don't make pretty pictures.
Right.
I make pictures that ideally change people's perspective. What is that? That is so cool. Ah, now I have your attention.
Yeah.
My job is not to make somebody look good. My job is to make somebody look interesting so they'll want to know more.
Right.
My job is to put them in some place that they did not know existed, in a space they didn't know existed. And so they say, "What is that?"
Exactly.
And therefore they commit themselves to some level of curiosity.
Right. And I
Start
mean,
with
that's
ooh,
so
move
hard.
to ah.
We're
Yeah.
we're communicating all the time with attention, but I think that sometimes we do need to have those moments where we're just having experiencing beauty and not taking pictures of landscapes or
Yeah.
whatever. Emily Dickinson, I just read that she had only published 10 poems and one letter in her lifetime, and when she died, they found 1,800 poems of hers, and some of
Yeah.
them were dedicated to her brother's wife, but that's another story. But I think that
Not going to judge the lifestyle. You have a good time.
I
You
know, right?
know,
But it's just funny that like she hold herself up for so long, and maybe that helped her finish her craft and hunker down. And there's times where we need to invest in solitude, but I do think it's important to really share what you're working on with the world. And given the fact that we've all experienced a pandemic, I think we're even more hard on ourselves about what we're doing to produce and leave a legacy and think about what our impact is. And a lot of people are soul searching and unable to do that in a way that, um, they feel kind of stuck, but they don't know what to do next. So, what would you recommend to someone who's feeling stuck right now?
well, It's about connection.
Hmm.
It's always about connection. If there's one thing that that 2020 should have taught all of us, is that we are not in a vacuum,
Yeah,
that we are dependent upon people we don't meet,
absolutely.
that the presence of our neighbors, even if we're not close friends with them, the fact that we know that we are surrounded by other people means something. When we were all locked in our houses and additional layers of disconnection happened, a lot of people had a hard time. They weren't worried about money, they were worried about emotional isolation.
Yeah,
That as social animals, we have to be part of a community. And that doesn't mean how many followers you have and how many likes you got. That is the exact opposite. It's actually knowing that you are connected in some, even small, but meaningful way to somebody outside of yourself.
yes,
That little pieces of kindness, little pieces of interconnectivity make all the difference. Otherwise, we are isolating ourselves and we have all kinds of mental and emotional breakdowns because of it. I do believe that the premise of social media was to connect people.
hmm,
The reality of social media is that because that connectivity is largely determined by an algorithm, which is being used to learn about us so we can be sold things while not realizing we're being sold things, but not seeing the other things that we want to see because it's the human stuff, it
yeah,
has had the exact opposite effect. We
exactly.
know that we are part of a massive intelligent commerce system, but we are not necessarily any more connected to people that add value to our lives, because the
Right.
social media thing, in order to get the likes and the hits and all of that, was intentionally also painting a false premise of our life. So you either talk about how wonderful your world is, or there's a pity party, but there's not necessarily a lot of real connection about real topics because it's too vulnerable. And that's where we fall. We need to be vulnerable.
Mm.
Good art is about introspection. And in that introspection is, I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I
And
think,
that's a tough thing.
yeah, I
And
was gonna say that's hard to
certainly in
say.
America, we're all supposed to be rugged individualist cowboys. We're not as supposed to say, I'm really not having the best day and I'm going to be okay, but I'm really doubting myself right now. And I don't want you to pity me. I just need to express myself.
Right.
We're not good at things like that.
And sitting in
And
it and thinking about what the next step is, right? I think that we're so action oriented sometimes we're not thinking about the problems that kind of got us back to where you're saying if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. I think that there's a lot of us that are struggling with what is next, right? And what does that mean for me? And what does that mean for my identity? And do I want to let this go? Do I want to sit in my comfort or do I want to push the boundaries and pursue something bigger and greater that I might fail at, but at least I tried?
I'm sorry to all of the advertisers, marketers, and businesses out there, but we should have realized during the lockdown periods that more stuff doesn't make us happier.
That's true.
That more things that give us meaning make us happier. That's why people got into gardening. They
Right.
learned to make their own bread. They learned to form their little own online communities to connect. Those things that had substance. And yes, a lot of people bought a whole bunch of stuff because they needed an outlet for their energy and attention. But
But now brands are struggling to sell the stuff that they, bulked up on and realized that
right,
people are not sitting at home and
because that is not a, it is a short-term solution to a short-term answer to a long-term problem.
right.
And the bigger problem is, how do you have a sense of connectivity to your world, internal, right? And through that, feel that your life has not value necessarily, but certainly a meaning. And it's not more stuff.
Right.
Again, the social media thing, glamour, glitz, yada, yada, yada. Okay, what else you got? because eventually, when you, okay, I think I mentioned this the other week. If there's one thing that the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial should tell everybody, is that your idols are just as messed up as you are, maybe
Yeah,
even more so.
because they have more
That
money instead of just
they just have bigger houses to cry in, right?
yeah.
That
And
they
that's
may have
loneliness
buckets
as
of money and millions of people who adore them, and they still have the same emotional needs that we do. So if if you want to be cooler than Johnny Depp, not be dependent,
right. I
not
never
be a
saw that
not be a
trial.
doormat.
I
Poor
never saw
guy.
that trial and could relate to anything. I think it's impressive how many people are tuning in because I'm just like, none of this is relatable to me. I try to choose the people in my life that aren't trying to, keep score, and I want people that are rooting for me, and I just feel so bad for them because they do both have huge fan bases and people are rooting for them, but they chose two people that, or, they chose each other, and they seem to just work so hard at tearing each other apart, and it's really hard to watch,
Yeah.
and it's amazing that that becomes our where all of our attention has turned to, because as a society I feel like we should be looking for those beautiful landscapes, looking for those wonderful opportunities of truth and beauty and light and poetry and art and things that make us connect to that meaning rather than the distractions in social media
Well,
or in
we are easily distracted.
yeah,
That's how so much of the world has functioned for such a long time. If we weren't so easily distracted, we'd vote that guy out of office that just continually screws everything up.
right,
But as soon as the next election comes up, he distracts us with shiny things.
right.
Um, what was the campaign a few years ago that basically said, yes, he's a scumbag, but he's our scumbag,
Oh, that's
right?
so
That
hard.
was basically the campaign for that guy,
Right,
right? But that's, we all have the attention span of squirrels. We all have deep emotional needs. And again, things like the algorithm and all of that know how to exploit us, each and every one of us and our weaknesses. What we need to do is realize, hey, I'm weak, but I don't have to be. I'm not, it's no different than being physically out of shape. Are you emotionally out of shape? Fine, work on it. Go
work
to
on
the
it.
emotion, go to the emotional gym, push a couple weights around. Then you're not going to be, as easy to be pushed around anymore. You're going to be stronger, more resilient. But you first have to realize that I need to go to the emotional gym,
Right, you have to have some sort of resistance, and I think we spend
and
so
we
much
have to support the
time
people
avoiding.
in our lives in that as they support us.
Mm,
And that goes back to the, are we spending time in our, as far as we know, our finite existence?
right,
Maybe the Hindus are right, but as far as I'm concerned, this is their only time around this life. In our finite existence, what are we doing that not only brings us joy, but adds to something outside of us that has nothing to do with making money and gaining status? I didn't start my job uh, back in '93 uh, because I thought I was going to be rich and famous. It was because it was the coolest, neatest thing I could possibly do. As a curious kid of all ages, I got a chance to go and see wondrous things. And
yeah,
I had people who would pay me enough money where I could keep doing it. But most people are trying to live their life based upon somebody else's expectations, and they wonder why they're miserable because they never asked themselves honestly what they wanted to do, how they wanted to leave some kind of something behind,
right.
right? And yes, you know, the great kings and generals and the scientists and artists that transform things, they will be known. The rest of us, only by the people who knew us. So make
Right.
them matter.
Right.
Again, going back to my audience, you know, I love the fact that I work so that I can hopefully transform people. I can broaden the world a little bit. And if I make somebody's world better, it's worth the effort. Simple
That is,
enough.
that is such a valiant, that's a wonderful place to leave this at, but that's such a valiant effort. how can people find you online if they would like to stay in touch, work with you, have an opportunity to, you know, tap into your
Well, lucky me, I got online back when it was, oh, dude, you got a web page? No way. So my URL is just my name. It's jonathancastner.com. I do have the same because there's only a couple of me out there. Um, so jonathancastner.com is my online portfolio. Same thing on Instagram, which I'm way behind on because, in all honesty, I'm great at talking about you, Ashley, but I'm not so keen on talking about myself. And that has always been one of my problems. There we go. One of my emotional weaknesses.
oh my god.
Um, and thank you, thank you, thank you. You've been a good influence so far. So I'll be most likely posting some more things on Instagram, and that's really about it. Because I would much rather people reach out to me directly.
Yeah.
I would rather broadcast your message than look at me, it's the me show, aren't I cool? Um,
Totally.
I'm working on some of those things, but I'm also on YouTube. I'm on Vimeo, where you can see
Yeah.
some of my video work, that sort of thing.
Is
And
that
give me
is
a call, buy me a beer. Let's talk.
I love
I
it.
like good conversation.
Is that hot dog building on there on your Vimeo?
Oh gosh. Oh god, what a show that is. It
So
should
funny.
be, I think.
That's it.
It's it's I love it. It's a bit more of a horror show than anything else, but there are some things that I've done that I'm not proud of, but are still a giggle after all
It's so
these years. And
funny.
that one's probably going to be one of those as well.
It's definitely trending relating to, the fact that it was on South Park recently. So it's
Yes.
really funny.
Yes.
The,
Yeah.
that video is hilarious. I would have never known that that really existed, but I do love having that
See,
Colorado.
once again, we broaden your world.
Exactly, exactly. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time,
More
and
than welcome.
everyone, please check out Jonathan, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care, everybody.